Okay, good morning, Facebook viewers. My name is Tom Lowy. I'm a reporter from the Galesburg Register Mail, and I am inside Lincoln School for the public question and answer session. Looks like Superintendent, District 205 Superintendent John Asplin is here, and we have now 20 people, 10 men and 10 women, and I'm not counting one sleepy-looking 2-year-old in the back. But this is designed to answer citizens' questions about the proposed school changes that District 205. They presented 3 plans, and here we go.
Hello, everyone. So this is really more of kind of a loose Q&A. There's really no presentation that we've planned. So what you have here are the 3 options that the board is going to discuss next Tuesday night. And so I encourage you to get up and move about, see what they look like if you haven't had a chance to look at them already. And then, really this is just a chance for you to ask any questions that you may have, concerns, anything. That's why we're here, is to try to help answer any questions that people would have about things they've heard, things they think may be happening that are or are not. So really I'm just here as a resource to try to help answer any questions that anybody has. So I would invite anybody, if you want, you're not going to offend me if you get up and start walking about and looking at the plans. That's what they're up for. But does anybody have any questions off the top of their head? Does anybody have anything? Yes, sir, Mr. Jacobs.
That's the question that I had a number of questions.
I hope I have a number of answers.
Given the report in the paper that Plan 1 would be the least expensive, and this was on September 23rd that this appeared in the Sunday paper.
Right, and just so what everybody understands, so we know, the option 1 that you see up here is not, I'm assuming, when you go, option 1 here is not the one you're
I'm talking about option 1 of the original fund.
It just does all the health, life, safety work in all the buildings.
And then I put in the paper a question that I had not asked you when we had visited on the phone. My first question is, why not that plan if that's the least expensive and the least upheaval to the children and the education?
Great question, and thanks for asking it, and I'll answer it as best I can. First of all, I'm going to back up a little bit and try to explain what health, life, safety is for those of you that may not know. So it comes from a provision from a law that was enacted in 1959. And health, life, safety monies are monies that schools can get, public schools can get from the constituents, from the community, through bonds, through your property tax levy, either one. And it pays for keeping things up to code in buildings, okay? So making sure that you have properly functioning windows, making sure that you have radon mitigation if you need it, to make sure that you don't, if you have asbestos, that you can mitigate that. For anything that's just really health related, if you have cracks in the sidewalk, you can fix those. If you have crumbling staircases, you can fix those. We don't have crumbling staircases, but that's what that money comes from, all right? So option 1 that Mr. Jacobs is referring to was really just taking all of those buildings, and going around and looking, I'm just looking at the health, life, safety numbers here. So at King right now, our health, life, safety is $3.6 million. The Nielsen Health, Life, Safety is $3.6 million. Lombard Junior High is very minimal because, as we all know, the board a few years ago upgraded that. We need some parking issues there, so it's $364,000. This building still has $600,000. Silas Willard has none because it's brand new. This is Rose Hoban. Rose Hoban, still even for that little building, has $2 million in health, life, safety. A lot of it has to do with the roof. Gale Elementary, $3.65 million. Galesburg High School, $17.7 million. And then Steele just has very minimal, $43,000. And then Churchill, $8.2 million. All right. So that money is all just to fix issues within the building. For instance, the high school, that's a big ticket item. A couple of really big issues there. You've got asbestos mitigation. You also have water pipes that are old, from 1959. And so replacing those would cost upwards of $3 million. And those repairs, if and when those are made, you would really never see many of them. Those are very, very invisible fixes within a building. So we could go and spend the $40 million, and 5 years from now, you walk in and go, "Where'd the money go?" Well, it's stuff you really don't see. That was definitely one of the options that the board considered. However, with our declining enrollment, we looked at having buildings that really aren't full now, and we didn't know if that was the best long-term decision for the district. So if you take, for instance, Gale's $3.6 million, $3,646,000, almost $3,647,000. Is that really an effective use of our money if we're going to spend that money to fix up a building that has declining enrollment, and eventually we just don't need the population there? So the board was, and I was, uneasy about spending $40 million on something people wouldn't see for a building we may not need pretty soon.
Are you bound, thank you for that, by the way. So that $40 million is wrapped up in life safety,
Yes, sir.
And maintenance and improvement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're projecting that given the trends of the past 10 years or so, or whatever, that you're just not going to need all these buildings?
The projections would certainly indicate that. Obviously, that can change due to things that we aren't aware of right now.
Are you bound, or the board bound to these three plans, picking one and not mixing and matching?
No, yeah, it's a great question. No, they're not. It's not a zero-sum, mutually exclusive proposition. I mean, that's why we're having this feedback. We're all for the best idea, whatever that is. And so, in trying to conceptualize it, we have these option 1, option 2, option 3, but it doesn't necessarily have to land on one of those.
I've lived in this community for 68 years. Born and bred here, I guess. There has always been a kind of subtle tension, and you could even say schism, between the north side of town and the south side of town. And although I lived north of what used to be the schism line, Main Street, I always felt that the south side of town got the dirty end of the stick. I like the fact that one plan has, well, I think a couple of them may have, using Lombard to bring children from all over the town, all over the city there. And in light of the fact you're not bound to one plan, would it be possible to put the same kind of money into Churchill that was put into Lombard, and have 5th and 6th at Lombard, and 7th and 8th at Churchill? I'll tell you one problem. Everything is political, and there have been a lot of decisions made in the past that had political ramifications, in the sense that the community felt like they were lied to or cheated or whatever. And I think if you start tearing down buildings and closing buildings, and then start building onto the high school, you're going to have a lot of legitimate questions being asked. So my question is, could you renovate Churchill, bring it up to 21st century standards, and then have your 5th and 6th at one school and 7th and 8th at the other?
The answer is yeah, absolutely, we could do that. And Mike, I'm going to lean on you for a second. I wasn't here. What did I have the numbers in my office? They're not at the tip of my tongue. What did it cost to rehab Lombard?
It was 13.
Yeah,
Oh, 13.
13 or 15. Yeah. So let's say 13. It would cost probably, I mean, this is really unfair. We're talking minimum at Churchill 8.2 million, but that doesn't get you air conditioning or anything like that we have at Lombard. So that is something we could do. That hasn't been one of the current solutions, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't be done. So that, you know, that could, if the board wishes to move in that direction, we could move in that direction. Nothing's been taken off the table.
This question's gonna, and I'm about done, by the way, folks. This question's hard for me to ask. I'm gonna make a statement, again, going back to the south side of town. Between Nielsen and King, I'm of the opinion that King should stay open. Now, that's hard for me to say because I taught at Nielsen for 35 years. I didn't open up the building, but I walked through the building when it opened in August of 1969. I'm going to give you a couple reasons. One is, first of all, you're keeping a building open, another building on the south side of town. You're also keeping a building open in the southeast section. You have steel in the southwest section. And then, although I could drag up all kinds of displeasure about Silas, we have it, and it would be central. Nielsen then is kind of out of geographical sync. And also, the traffic situation at Nielsen is much more problematic than at King, with Losey Street coming right almost to that drive that comes out of the teacher's parking lot.
Right. Well, the bridge there is problematic.
Yeah.
For visibility.
So, wouldn't, in light of that, it be better to keep King open and, however, not sell or knock down or whatever the plan would be Nielsen, but to lease space in there to nonprofits or whoever would want to go in there so that you could maintain a cost maintenance on the building and hold it in reserve in case somebody with, or some bodies with vision about this community would implement that vision so that we would grow a little bit and get more enrollment. And if you needed another school, then you had another school. You wouldn't have to build another school. I'll let you respond.
Well, and I would be completely transparent. King and Nielsen, in all the plans, are somewhat interchangeable. I mean, they have the same footprint. They're on the same street. So just because one plan says keep Nielsen and another one says keep King, you know, we've kind of looked at those as they're kind of in even standing. They have the same, almost identical amount of fixing up to do. Their health, life, safety bill is almost identical. So nothing there has been decided, and I understand and can agree with a lot of your statements there on the traffic issues there at Nielsen.
I think it's geographical in favor of King and cultural/class in favor of King. Now that last question, I didn't notice anything about Galesburg, GHS North. In full disclosure, I was opposed to that at first, but since I've done a 180, I think they ought to be in a separate building. And rather than to sell Gale off, I realized the problems with Rose Holden. Could you move them over to Gale and use that as an alternative school? And that's my last question.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. That's something we've discussed. One of the things that, the concepts we probably should discuss here is the portability of health, life, safety funds. And one of the reasons that we had not recommended that, although it was something that we had definitely discussed in detail, is that we needed some of those, or a lot of those, or all of those funds from the health, life, safety standpoint from Gale to help add on or alter other buildings where those students would go. So that's the reason we don't have that as a recommendation right now. But We do have a concern with the number of students that we send out on buses to the Quad Cities and to Peoria. We would love to create a day treatment program here, much like Treewind in Peoria, if you're familiar with that. But right now, it's trying to figure out the facility we have left, and in complete honesty, you know, the one that's probably worst shape is probably not the best term I can think of, but the one in most need of help is Gale. The ground there is very soft, and the concrete is sunk, and so that's a bit more problematic trying to save that building just because of the substrate underneath it. You know, that was marshy ground when it was built there, and it continues to be marshy ground. So there's some problems there with that. If you go into parts of Gale, there's about that big of a difference in what, you know, it looks like a step, and it's not supposed to be a step. They're supposed to be the same, but the ground has sunk a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
This is just a clarification question. You mentioned the portability of these funds. Does that mean that the whole 40 million that you outlined could be accessed, even though some of those buildings might not be used? That you could use those funds?
Yeah, it has to be
elsewhere in the
approved by
district?
ISB, and in full transparency, we haven't gotten the final approval from them, so this is all still a tentative concept. It is within the code, though, that if you, I won't use a building name for a second, just building X, all right? If you have all the students in building X and it has $4 million of health, life, safety work, and you're moving all those students to building Y, the money needs to follow the students.
Got it.
Okay, so, and that has to be approved. But it is, that concept is approved in the code, but they have to get each individual plan approved that way. So that's how the portability works. It has to follow the students that would have been in that building. Yes, sir.
Since bonds were mentioned, thinking about recent changes or whatever at GHS, recent last couple of years, were bonds used to finance those changes or improvements?
Yes.
What kind of bonds were they? Not life safety?
No.
Some, well, alternate revenue.
Alternate
bonds were
revenue,
used
right?
For the
Yeah.
field house,
Okay.
and there was some health life safety used for the renovations of the entrance.
I didn't hear her last statement.
Some health, life, safety for the entrance, but then alternate revenue for the field house and the football stadium.
Can you explain alternate revenue?
Alternate revenue bonds is it's just a different type of bond that you have access to from a school standpoint. There's debt certificate bonds, there's alternate revenue bonds, there's standard construction bonds, there's health, life, safety bonds, and they're just all.
But those are being paid by the sales tax. Is that why they're alternative revenue?
Yeah, that's a sales tax related bond, yes.
Okay.
So I'm concerned that all the communication coming from the district right now is about the physical buildings, and we haven't really heard anything. You know, we're asking for input, but we haven't heard anything about the actual teaching and instruction of the students and how that might change under all of these models. And you've sent out this survey that you want us to respond to, and I don't feel like I can do that in an intelligent way, because I don't know, for example, if we move to a 7 to 12 model, what does that mean for band instruction? Does that mean beginning band starts at grade 7? Or does that mean beginning band starts now at grade 5? Do we still do grade 6 band? I have no understanding of how this is gonna look. I don't know if a 5th grader is, or you know, a 3rd grader is doing math at the 5th grade level, but reading at the 2nd grade level. Are they still gonna have the opportunity to get individualized instruction? Right now, that was done pretty seamlessly for children who were accelerated in one area by just moving them up to the next grade level. But if you only have 2 grades in a school, clearly that's gonna be more difficult. And I feel like as parents, we haven't been given any information about what the pedagogy is gonna look like in each of these plans. So it's really difficult. Like, I understand buildings need to be maintained and buildings need to be repaired, and if there's a, you know, an unsafe building, obviously we need to address that, but it's hard, I think, for me to make any kind of intelligent input when you haven't communicated that to us, and it feels like this is really being rushed without us having a clear picture of what it's gonna do to the instruction of our children.
Okay, so which part do you want me to address first?
I wanna know, I'd like to know about band, and I'd like to know about acceleration and individualized instruction, and I'd like to know,
Okay, well, let's
how
start
that's
there.
gonna be communicated
We'll start there.
to parents.
So band, nothing's been decided. It would not start any later, I can tell you that. You know, I would like to see, personally, I'd like to see band start at 5th grade. You know, right now it starts at 6th because that's what we do. There's not a good reason, there's not a bad reason, that's just what we do.
Well, and doesn't the band instructor go from Churchill to Lombard, so
Yes.
you have travel time that's,
Well,
the band doesn't?
Well, the band, no, I mean, they share, so you have somebody that's just at Churchill, you have somebody that's just at Lombard, and then they come together to do like individual lessons. So, but yeah. So, we would love to be able to start that sooner, if possible. I mean, no promises right now, but that would be great. In terms of, you know, gifted, talented, all those sorts of things, we have a lot of work to do there regardless of what building structure we have. Matter of fact, there's a state law now that says that we have to really get after that and much faster. We're working on it. And so we need a much more fundamental plan regardless of what our building schedule is. You know, the positives of, well, let's just use, you know, building option 1 there. That's pretty much similar to what we have now. So you'd have, you know, verticality, kindergarten through 5th grade in a building. And that's good for the gifted and talented part of it. But that's also then bad for trying to make sure we have even distribution of resources throughout the district. And so, you know, there's good and bad to both of those. The 7, 8, 9 concept at the high school, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You know, the pedagogical impacts there some of that would have to be negotiated, first of all. So we have disparate schedules right now between the junior highs and the high school. That's not an insurmountable problem, but it's an issue. So one of our big concerns is the fact that our 9th graders have shown the transition from junior high to high school has been problematic. And so we've had a lot of students kind of fall by the wayside in 9th grade. So we would like to explore the 7, 8, 9 concept that we used to have here, where students are much more in a middle school concept through 9th grade because they'd be that much closer to graduating, and we'd be able to keep more students engaged through middle school, and then that would just be the last 3 years of high school. However, if you had a 7-12 facility, for a student, and math's always the easy example, if you have a really talented student in math, they could take upper level math classes when they were in still the middle school grades, because they're all in the same facility. You know, the pedagogical needs of the kids, you know, really, these facility improvements really wouldn't lessen or increase the need for pedagogical renewal anyway, okay? So we need to always be looking at that. And that's something that we continue to do that. With the addition of a curriculum director this year, I'm very excited that, we've moved back in that direction to focus more on that. So we've made no final decisions on any of this. I understand your concerns about, the input, and people are fearing that we've moved too fast. I will tell you, from my perspective, we moved too slow.
Well, I mean, it should have been,
Okay.
I
mean,
this is where we are.
we are where we are. This is a great turnout, first of all. Thank you for coming. I didn't figure there'd be this many people here. Thought I'd kind of be talking to Maury. So, I mean, this is wonderful. But I'll get to you in a second, Sharon. But I think, this is a key part of it. We haven't come to a final solution. We have to have this dialogue to figure out where people's heads are, what people want. Yes, I've received feedback that, over my dead body, should we have attendance centers? I've received feedback that my kid will never go into Lombard. I've received feedback that you can't close Gale, it's the best school in the district. I've received feedback that you can't put 7th graders with 12th graders. I know, okay? I know that's out there, okay? We're dealing with a certain amount of money. We're dealing with a declining population. We're dealing with a 6-year deadline to get work done. We're dealing with a limited amount of bonding authority. We're dealing with the sensitivity to the tax rate. We have a lot of things going on, and we are trying to spur people to have conversations. So, I'm really happy that people are a little agitated. To be honest with you, I'm happy that people are upset, because that means that people are interested and want to see some change.
Well, and so also, what would you envision then? Because right now, you've got 6th, 7th, 8th graders involved in athletics, for example. So what does that? I mean, that really, then you have to either transport them to where the 7th graders are, if they're gonna have like a track practice, or you're having.
Well,
practice
track is
at the
already,
fifth
we
set.
have track
But you know,
already.
but that's what I'm saying, how do you envision?
Yeah, we've had meetings on that to look at how we would handle the athletic facility part of it. It can be done under the 7-12 concept that we have now, there has to be some sharing of space. We would still like to keep 2 competitive teams in each level, just because we wanna have more kids involved. So we don't anticipate having a lessening of opportunity for kids if there was one middle school. You know, that, if extracurriculars is our biggest concern, that's an easy problem to fix, okay? Oh, Sharon, yeah.
Okay, I know these decisions are very difficult for boards of education to make, and we have some awesome people on our board who've given countless hours of their life, good and bad, to serve this school district. So, kind of in the spirit of what you just said, and I know you think that they're going slow, I guess, I feel because communication is kind of an issue. How many people on this current board are gonna be going off
I
in
don't know.
April? Like how many terms are up?
4.
4. So at least we're gonna have 4 new board members.
Well,
Possibly,
run
if
again.
they're running, I don't know
Theoretically.
who's running and who's not running, but possibly we could have 4 new board members.
that is true.
So I guess my question is this a decision that has to be made with the current board? Because I would be of the persuasion that we maybe need to let the new board, because they're the ones who are gonna have to deal with this issue.
I would disagree with you.
That's
Everybody's
fine.
gonna have to deal with it.
Right?
The problem, and it may come to pass that the next board does make the decision. Nothing's been decided when the decision's gonna be made. Our concern is that this board has been either 4 years or 2 years in it, and it's like going to Springfield or going to Washington, you know? Well, we gotta wait until they get elected. Well, they just got elected. Well, we got midterms. Well, there's always a reason to not vote, okay? And this board is going to be the most educated group of people on this decision. And it would be a much better decision with a lot of education. If we wait for the next board, and which we may have to. We get then, I don't wanna have somebody, you know, Weston runs for the board, sorry, I just looked at that. Weston runs for the board and you go, hey Weston, I want you to vote on this $52 million concept in May of your first, you know, term. Whoa, I'm not, you know, I wouldn't wanna ask them to do that. So now we're probably till, let's say even September of their first term. Well, now you're not gonna be able to do work until the next summer. Now we've delayed it another year.
So but what is the hurry? Like, I'm kind of thinking that you guys are planning on voting on this in October, so maybe I'm wrong there.
No, there will be nothing on here to vote on in October.
Okay.
No, the soonest there would be a vote of any kind would be November, and even then I'm kind of doubtful that would happen. I mean, we gotta get through a lot of conversation, we gotta get through a lot of feedback, we gotta get through a lot of, we still have some hurdles to clear at the state level. We still haven't gotten the bond folks back to tell us what they actually think the rates would be. So we don't have all the good information for Rod and Maury and 5 other folks to make. So I would not feel comfortable making a recommendation until the earliest of November, and even then I'm kind of doubtful because we just don't have that information back yet.
And what is the inflationary pressure on the cost?
Yeah, 3 to 5%. You know, 3 to 5% of inflationary factor too. I mean, in 2015, when they did the original health, life, safety, it was at 28 million. Well, now through steel tariffs and a lot of other things, that suddenly went from 28 to 40 million. I mean,
And as we found in other building projects here, no matter when you get going, the costs, I mean, things,
Right.
the budget doesn't always
right.
meet
The longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. Now, the longer we wait, the better decision we'll make too. So there's a push-pull there, and we're trying to meet both masters here. I still think it would be best for this board to make that decision if we could get work started this summer, because it's gonna be cheaper this summer than next summer.
But you could get work started on some buildings.
But not if we waited until the board election.
Well, on ones you're gonna keep open, or, there's
It
something
would
could
be-
be done this summer.
If we waited till the board election, I wouldn't feel comfortable asking a new board to make that vote until they've probably been on 3-4 months at least. At least. Yes, ma'am.
This is a question about building onto the high school and having the 7th through 9th grade, so it kind of piggybacks on what she was saying. conversation that was happening at the school board and before with the concerns were that those kids would not be interacting with the high school students, you know, you're keeping them separate. So my question is, I have a freshman at the high school this year. She is in honors biology. She is one of 4 freshmen in that class. It is a sophomore and junior, and there's even, I think, a senior in that class. So would that opportunity for her to take that type of class, or you talked about, you know, math classes, be taken away because of the separate wing and the kids being separate from the rest of the high schoolers?
No.
And then how would you address then, which I think is good, those parents who have asked those questions about making sure those kids are separate, that there's no interaction? It seems, it was said there will be no interaction, but now it kind of sounds like.
Well, the general population, they would be segregated. However, for individual instances where you have students that are advanced, it's very simple to supervise one kid. We don't want to say we're going to supervise 1,200 kids, you know, through crossing streams. So for individual students, we can certainly make those accommodations, but for large groups, we wouldn't want to be mixing those populations on a bell schedule.
Could you also talk about with that building on, they talked about the possibility of getting rid of the auditorium at the high school and the implications both
Yeah,
for
it's
the
not
high
really
school
getting,
and
it's
the-
not really getting rid of it, it would be altering it, so that it would be somewhat of a commons auditorium. It would still have the ability to be an auditorium and have concerts and do things like that. It would just also serve another purpose. It wouldn't be the traditional tiered seating like it is now, walls all the way around an auditorium, but there would be alterations made so it would be more of a flat, somewhat tiered facility where you could use it for lunch and you could use it for other things, but then you could also set it up for an auditorium.
Would there be a stage in?
There'd still be the stage that's there now.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, sir.
What are the enrollment projections for the next 5 and 10 years?
Yeah, the projections, the cohort survival ratios, which is the nerdy term that we use to look at, you know, if a 5th grader then becomes a 6th grader and so on. So our cohort survival ratios show a negative 1 to 3% index. Okay, so every year our 5th graders moving to 6th graders get 1 to 3% smaller. Our 6th graders and 7th graders get 1 to 3% smaller. So it's showing that negative index of about 1 to 3%, 1 to 3%, and that's been persistent for about 5 to 6 years now.
Yes, I have a few questions. I also was really excited to hear that you are not, it's not definitely gonna be one of those 5 necessarily, because I thought that the option that Mr. Jacobs talked about with the 6 Lombard, 7 takes Churchill, or vice versa, was really, could be really appealing. But to go along with what, the question about the auditorium, I guess my 2 main questions, I didn't feel like I could answer the survey, because I felt like there was information, I just couldn't make an informed opinion. And the 2 main things I was wondering about were those operational costs for each of those 5 options.
Right.
Because if one of these options is way more expensive to run every year in the future, that matters, or if one is way less expensive, that matters to me. And then also, maybe even more so, those building plans, things like seeing, well, what does an auditorium, commons, what does that look like? What does that do to our theater programs or band programs or choir or music, you know, and so on. So are the operational costs gonna be made available to the public before a decision will be made? And are
Yes.
the building plans gonna be made public?
Well, yes, before anything's final. This is a question I've gotten a lot of, and thank you for asking so I can answer. We have not paid for floor plans to be drawn up. That's really expensive, okay? So we didn't feel that it was a proper use of taxpayer money to do detailed floor plans of all the options, because right now they're just concepts, okay? Now they're concepts based on real numbers of knowing how many square feet you need per student, okay? So that's really all we've kind of dealt with right now, is square feet per student, in terms of, we don't know where the exit door is gonna go, or where the 5th graders are gonna sit, or, I mean, that's down the road. And so we haven't put that in, because once again, it's a lot of money, and so we didn't wanna spend that money. In terms of the operational savings, we have not published that yet, because I don't want to overpromise something, okay? And so we have numbers, and I could really easily show you this is what it'll save to close Gale, okay? But that's kind of disingenuous, because the money that we're gonna save to close Gale, we are gonna have to then, if we have air conditioning at, you know, another building, we're gonna have to air condition that, and that's gonna be an increased utility cost. And, you know, I don't wanna be that guy that says, yeah, you're gonna save $3 million, oh, it's only gonna be $2 million. So I wanna get that number right before we get it out there. And so we could show you what it costs to run a building, and we did on some of the documents that we sent out. At least we sent it to the newspaper. I can't remember anymore, I'll be honest with you, who's seen what. But we have those, what the operational costs of the buildings are, but there would be increased operational costs when we move the students. And we don't have that nailed down yet. And so I don't wanna put that number out because it would be an exaggerated savings and I don't wanna be dishonest.
But I know we have the cost of what it costs to run each of them now, but the question really is what each of, and I realize it would have to be ballpark and things come up, but what it would cost to run each of the proposed options.
Right, and that's what we need to get to, and we are working on that. But I wanna get as right as I can, and so there are some, it's a little more difficult than just saying, okay, add a secretary and subtract a custodian, that kind of thing. Yes, ma'am.
When the board votes on the options, whenever that happens, will they have a floor plan and as much of concrete numbers
Yeah.
financially as they
Yeah,
can?
yeah, I'm not doing my job very well if they don't.
So they
I
will
wouldn't ask
say
them to vote on
option
it.
A and option B, and here's what it actually, floor plan looks like for the buildings, they'll be voting on that specifically.
There won't
for the
there won't
concept.
be, you won't see floor plans, I mean, we're
So
really
the
not.
board won't see a floor plan?
They'll have concepts, but once again, we don't really wanna spend the money on detailed floor plans,
Right.
except for a plan. Okay?
I have heard a rumor, I do not have any idea if this is true, but I was hoping maybe you could address it. So I have heard a rumor that some of these plans have been based on the idea that the rooms at the high school then are utilized 100% of the day, and that faculty, teachers are no longer in the rooms during their prep and plan. Is that accurate, or is that a misinterpretation of something that was said?
We understand that there are gonna be rooms that are gonna be vacant, okay, during certain periods. But we are looking at, the possibility of sharing more rooms than we do now, okay? Because anytime right now, at the high school, at any one time, not every room, because there are some shared spaces, but a fourth of the building is not being used.
For students.
Yeah, with students. And so that, if you really wanna get the maximum amount of dollars, that might not be the greatest thing for a teacher who might have to work out of a cart sometimes. But if we wanna keep the same footprint with the same amount of non-student space, it just stretches that dollar a little farther.
So these concepts include teacher work areas?
Yes.
Or they're working on their car, sending email on their phone? I mean, what are we talking about here?
No, there would absolutely have to be teacher office space, teacher workspace, they need to have their own space. Yes, sir.
Well, when it comes to the survey and the informed decision thing, will there be another one come out when the operational costs are things, or is this one gonna be kept open when that information, just for those of us who are struggling to fill out the
Sure.
survey based on.
Well, the reason we're having this meeting, one, is for this, and two, so that you feel more comfortable filling out the survey when you do. And we're somewhat building the bridge as we walk on it here, so there may be another survey that goes out, there may not. We're trying to decide as we move along. We knew we were gonna at least at minimum do this one, and then we'll kind of see where we are a month from now, because we're still trying to feel our way through this. And knowing that we have 6 years, which really isn't that much time, and trying to make a good decision, and get feedback, and trying to word the questions in a way that we know we're trying to get the answers that people want to give us and things like that. If anybody has suggestions for ways to improve the communication, believe me, we're all for it. We're not trying to hide anything. I mean, we're just trying to plow through this and get through as much work as we can, as quickly as we can, and responsibly as we can. So if anybody
Well, I
has.
don't think these were sent out by Skyward. I only knew about this because I saw it on Sharon's Facebook. I was out of town all
This
weekend.
meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, it was at the end of the survey too. Like if you completed the survey.
Complete the survey.
I know, but it was.
It was no Sky, there was no Skyward.
No, and I also
And it's
did.
not on the district website.
And,
No.
it's on the district.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
Yeah.
must
Well,
be a
it wasn't on the
prominent
main
place.
page, cause I was looking for where it was.
And just so you know, we purposely didn't put it out as a Skylar because I was getting a lot of complaints that we sent out too many Skylars. So, I mean, I understand we make one person happy, we make another person happy. Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna speak a little bit about the declining enrollment, for our area, because that is something that's been an issue for many years
Sure.
in Galesburg. And as a taxpayer and as somebody that's chosen to, this is my retirement home, I think we need to address the fact that Galesburg is one of the highest tax rates in central Illinois. I know that because we've looked in Peoria, we've looked in East Peoria, we've looked in Bloomington Normal. My son lives in DuPage County. Their property tax rates in DuPage County are less than Galesburg.
Oh, of course they are.
But in saying
Their
that.
property's also 5 times more valuable.
Absolutely, and I agree with that, but what I'm saying is in comparing oranges with oranges, we want to be able to recruit the best and the brightest to come to Galesburg. And one of those hurdles is to keep the tax rates reasonable for the taxpayers so that they can come back to Galesburg. This has always been a town of industrial, and because we've lost over 6,000 jobs over the last 30 years probably, we've become more entrepreneurial, we've become more of depending on this being a bedroom community where we're commuting all the time. I'd love to see it come back to Galesburg.
I agree, and we are very sensitive to the fact that we know the tax rate is up there, especially considering historically where it's been. You know, when you lose Maytag and Butler, and you know, you're not gonna, I mean, your assessed valuation plummets, so your tax rate goes up. That's definitely part of the decision-making process. And we know that, you know, we've got outdated buildings that we need to fix up. You know, we've got some buildings that whether we want to fix them up or not, you know, the law says we have to. And so that's part of it too. And once again, that's why we feel like if we wait, it's just gonna be that much more of a burden on the taxpayer because the cost is gonna go up. You know, we're not in a very enviable situation right now. I mean,
Absolutely
we're just
not,
not.
but you know, as a taxpayer, we have chosen this as a forever home.
And we understand that.
And my son is coming back here after.
We don't wanna
20
squeeze
years.
out retirees, and we know the average age of this county continues to go up. And you're on fixed incomes, and that's definitely a driver of this decision, we know that.
And it took a lot of research for us to come back to Galesburg, because trust me, everywhere you go, you're going to find something.
I've lived all over Illinois,
Yeah,
I
and so
understand.
you understand, we went to Missouri, we went to Indiana, we went to Iowa, we've checked in every state trying to find that place, which doesn't really exist.
Right.
We have, and Mike will attest to this, we were one of the largest railroad hubs in the world during the Cold War. We're getting that back, it's coming back to Galesburg, but there's so many people that have left this area that the jobs are here, but the workforce is not. So I'm hoping that at some point that maybe the school district can assist with bringing the best and the brightest back to Galesburg.
Well, and that's part of our goal process through the board is to create the skills, help the students have the skills to be employed in this area or wherever they want to go. But you know, ideally, if they want to stay here, we hope they can. We feel right now that our facilities are not helping us in that. You know, for instance, the vocational center. I'm really happy we have a vocational center. It was built in 1959 for 1959 vocational skills. You know, we would like to reimagine that and reinvent that so that we can help the Pegasus, the Jupiters, you know, those folks that are into, you know, high tech, boat tech. And right now we just aren't. We're doing a really good job for the facilities we have. We just, you know, our teachers would really benefit and our students would benefit.
And I think
from having a better
partnering with,
facility for that.
much more, I know we're doing some partnering with the colleges here in town.
Yep.
I think we need to see more of that.
We
I
agree.
think it all, you know, it all comes together. Yes, I'm a taxpayer, but I'm choosing to stay here.
Sure. Yeah, I mean.
And I was a 23 years district employee, so I understand the concepts, I understand on both sides. But I also know that we have to be able to recruit the best teachers.
Absolutely.
We have to be able to recruit the best administrators, to be able to bring this community back to even 50% of what it used to be.
Right.
We're gonna have to be able to recruit those people.
Well, and you know, you bring up a point, I'll get to you in a second, Jim. You bring up a point that, you know, I think everybody should make sure we understand, is that, you know, Illinois is a very property tax dependent state, okay? Do I think that's a good idea? No, I don't. But that's the game we're in. I used to be a superintendent up in the North Shore suburbs of Chicago. And we had 6 square miles in my school district, and our assessed valuation was $800 million. Okay, and we didn't have one factory in that town. All right, it was homes. Okay, we were part of the Lake Forest High School District. Their assessed valuation was $2.2 billion. Okay, our assessed valuation here is a little over $400 million. All right, we have roughly the same number of students served as the community I just told you about. So they love to talk about the fact that their tax rate was 98 cents. Like, yeah, because your EAV is $2.2 billion. You know, you can generate a lot of money off of a $2.2 billion EAV. Okay, so we are trying, and we know, you know, but every business that moves away that declines that tax base, and so we know that there's this cyclical nature to this, that we need to try to help the entrepreneurial folks here to build that base to get folks back. So it's all part of the same system, and we know that we're an integral part of that. And so once again, we're sensitive to the tax rate part, but it's the chicken or the egg thing too. So do we sacrifice the tax rate to get a better facility, to help the kids get the skills, to create a bigger tax base, to then lower the tax rate, or do we cut the tax rate, not have the facilities, people move away, further eroding the tax base? You know,
Exactly, and what we're asking for, I think, as taxpayers, and this is what you're speaking about now, is financial responsibility, making the best choices, having forums like this, where we can speak in a public forum, ask the tough questions.
Absolutely.
There is no perfect answer.
No. If somebody does have it available.
There's always a tug of war between taxes and pedagogy, because what happens is as we have experienced, when your tax base erodes, everybody should want the educational quality to continue, and in order to do that, you're going to have to increase the tax rate to maintain the educational quality. I think more than taxes, and I almost never disagree with Teresa over here, but I think that more than taxes, young people coming into a community look at the quality of education. They're willing to pay taxes if the educational quality is good. And I think that so many of the decisions we've made in the past, in my case, it would be 72 years. I don't remember when I was a little kid, but they have been based on finances and taxes rather than on the quality of education. And I would like to see us really strain to keep that emphasis on pedagogy at the forefront.
Thank you.
And I agree with you, Jim.
I know. Well,
It's that slippery slope.
It absolutely is.
There has to be a give and a take in every circumstance, and for one, I had a son that was a valedictorian in his class. He received a phenomenal education here, and I will speak of that any day of the week. I want that to continue. I want it to improve. My first priority is to the students of this district, and always has been. But I think we have to go to that ugly place. We have to go to taxes.
Well, there's no such thing as a free lunch. I mean, you know, we have to be
But we just
mindful of
wanna
that.
make sure, as the taxpayers and as basically as the key holders to the gatekeepers, we wanna be involved at this point, to make sure that that happens. And it sounds as if you do have some viable suggestions on the board, and we'd love to hear more.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. As far as busing goes, I know you talked about at the board meeting that, you know, it's parents' choices to, you know, pick their children up or take when busing is provided. So if you have a child that lives like at Lincoln Parkish area,
Okay.
and they're going to Lombard, how long is that child probably going to be on the bus for? Because obviously you're gonna stop and pick up children on the way. Are we talking like an hour?
I would think no more than 35 minutes, but that would be, I mean, depending on, we'd have to redo the route, so I wouldn't wanna stand here today and tell you a maximum. I mean, it would never be more than an
Because
hour.
I know one day, and this was a fluke, you know, my children go to Gale, and it took them 45 minutes to get to, you know, Churchill. And I just didn't know how that's going to look.
Right. Well, and right now, you know, we have students that ride, we have kindergartners through 12th graders on 2 of our routes. You know, we have a mixed population in there, depending on the route that you're on. We also have an issue, and you know, we can do transportation talks for a long time, and you know, there's a real, and I understand why. This isn't a blame game here, but we ask parents at the beginning of the year, will your child be riding the bus? Okay, and a lot of parents say yes, even though their kids never do, because they might need it. We get that, but you know, we stand out at the high school and we watch 2 kids get on a bus.
Right,
There's
I've seen
4,
those buses,
like,
yeah.
and then, but then they do go to Churchill and Lombard and they pick up, you know, and so some of these buses may be half full, but we might have 100 people on the roster because we know that they might ride, but it's gonna depend on the day, and then in the winter it gets worse, and you know, so it's very difficult to plan those routes when you really don't know how many kids are gonna ride. But you have to plan for, you know, the emergency of if everybody rides, so you have to have extra buses standing by. And so, you know, the nice thing about our community here is it really isn't geographically very big. Okay, my previous district we had 188 square miles. Okay, but our longest bus route was 1 hour and 5 minutes because we were dedicated to trying to keep it to an hour. We had one, we just couldn't do it. But you know, we tried best we could to get that done. Here we just don't. You know, the longest from one school to another, what did you say, 3.4 miles? 4.3. I'm dyslexic. 4.3 miles. Yeah. So, yeah, but we also know people live down in Bracken, you know, or people live up Henderson Grove, you know, they might have a, you know, a hike. I don't know what school they're going to.
And I have another question, as far as, we have all these options, and all this work's gonna be done at all these buildings. Are you gonna start at the top, start at GHS and work your way down, or are you working on
Probably not.
everything at one time?
It would all depend on what, well, let me start with, no, we wouldn't do it all at one time. Okay, we would start in a building or 2, maybe 3, and then we would probably move populations around. So all this is conjecture, but just because we're on that subject. So let's say we go to option 3, okay, and we have the 7-12 concept at the high school. We're gonna have to take part of the high school and not use it for a while. So let's say we close Gale a year early, we probably need to use Gale for some classroom space at the high school before we would completely close the building. So no, it would have to be staged. Yes.
Chris Bailey, I'm up here, an educator at Right Futures. I just like to know who people are too, so I'd love to hear names afterwards. It's probably been discussed, but could you talk more about the rationale of putting pre-K and kindergarten together? I haven't heard that discussed.
We have not, that hasn't been asked today.
Okay.
Well, that is one of the options we wanted to look at, to see logistically if we could have an early learning center for students. We feel like if we were going to have an attendance center, I mean the high school's an attendance center, but if we were gonna have a grade school attendance center, we wanted to look at an early childhood, early learning center for that, because we felt like we could put more resources in there when the kids are really, when the most resources are needed to be brought to bear to help kids get up to speed. So that was the one attendance center concept that we kind of stuck with, because we feel like there's, pedagogically speaking, you know, some definite advantages there to having a pre-K concept, and having an early learning center that's very specific to just early learners. Yes.
If you do have a pre-K building, will that be all pre-K? Cause I know like my children didn't qualify, I spent thousands of dollars to send them to preschool.
It would still just be the current pre-K program unless we found some other avenue of money somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, we were talking about expanding it at this
And how
moment.
many kids are in the pre-K program?
182.
And you said there's about 300 per grade level, so
Yeah.
not.
Yes, that's about half. Well, that's not true, about a third, because it's 2 grades. Yes,
If this has already been asked, stop me, but it's.
it's already been asked. No.
Not today though, go ahead.
Option 3, 4, and 5 are the options where the 7th and 8th grade goes to the high school. And I'm assuming that, you know, so you can utilize this high school 1/4 that's not being used. But bouncing off of, is it Mr. Jim back there? Is there any studies or anything we know about that 7th and 8th grade is a good place to be with 9th through 12th graders?
I don't think that's when there's the 7-12 on the same campus, it's not just, those kids wouldn't be clocked in, pushed into rooms